Hey, what's up? What's good? Welcome to my channel. My name is Sheifunmi, and this is Thought Indigo. So I realized that I don't actually always ask people to like my videos or subscribe. So now I'm telling you, like this video, subscribe to this channel. I have a lot of interesting content that will enlighten you, and yes, and that will just make you, have that positive energy, positive vibrations, and help you raise your vibrations too. So I posted on my Instagram saying I was going to do a video talking about shadow self, and now I am doing a video talking about shadow self. So at first I thought this video was going to be one of those videos that, I would do, and I'll do later on really, because I had like topics planned out. I'm currently on vacation, and I'm like, it feels, how do I explain it? When writers or creatives go on like their creative retreat, or what was it called, like this, it's a residency feel. So so I was cooking this morning, and I was trying to do, just get myself comfortable, because I haven't really actually done a lot of work. I've just breezed through and like finished up with some leftovers that I had to, and but yeah, so and I was just going to put this at the back burner and say, like, well, I guess we'll talk about this later. I already posted about it on Instagram, so I'll take my time to talk about shadow self. But for some reason, the universe is like, Shay, you gotta talk about shadow self this morning. You gotta talk about dealing with your shadow self. So I'm going to do a series on my channel on this channel, called Dealing with Your Shadow Self. But first, what is shadow self? I have my notes, so I need to pull them up. Yeah. So what is your shadow self really? Your shadow self is, I think a lot of people would describe it as your dark side. When people will say, oh, we have our good side and we have our dark side. So your shadow self in a way is your dark side, but not necessarily so. I always input not necessarily so, because it differs for people. Some shadow selves, some people's shadow sides are on the extreme dark side. Some people's shadow sides are just shadow sides. That when you're about to, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you can walk through that. But there's some people's shadow sides that you're like, yeah, like what's going on? So essentially, shadow side is that part of you that you do not necessarily share with you don't even share with anybody, you're ashamed to share with anybody, or it's a part of yourself that you fail to admit that is a part of you. It's a part of yourself that, that when it bubbles up to the surface, it scares you, it throws you off balance, you instantly want to hide that part of yourself. It's like you want to, it's a part of yourself that makes you want to crawl into your own self or your own skin. So that is essentially your shadow self. A lot of our shadow self, or a lot of what makes up of our shadow self, or the negativity of our life, or our negative attitude, our negative energy, is a component of our shadow self. Like, what's the basic ingredient for our negativity, or our negative energy, or our negative side? It is our shadow self. So the thing is, as much as we talk about shadow selves and things like that, while they're known to set limitations on us, or on our beings, or on our journey, on who we are, and give us this limited self-beliefs and make us doubt ourselves and not put us in that space and entrapment of fear, our shadow self is actually a catalyst to being the best we can ever be in this world. Being able to deal with our shadow self, it's one of those things that helps you understand just how resilient you are, and how brave you are, and just how much courage is within you. And the fact that, dealing with your shadow self, for me though, dealing with my shadow self, let me know that, fear is just an illusion. And I used to be someone, that's a part of my shadow self actually. I used to be a part of my shadow self that used to be afraid. of everything. Like afraid to talk to someone, afraid to say hello, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to express myself, afraid to look at someone, afraid to just be, afraid to go out. I was always afraid. I was living in a constant space of fear. I would question things, I would analyze things and everything. But you know what? That shadow self for me was, you know, a component of what I had growing up. And I always share my story, not because, you know, my parents are terrible people. Trust me, I don't joke with my mom. Anyone who knows this, because my mom, she is the bomb. Like, she'll ride or die for you. So, so yeah, that's my mom. Like, she'll go through the ends of the world for you. But she doesn't take no nonsense. She's a disciplinarian. So I grew up with a disciplinarian. So, but for me, my fear came with the way I was raised. I was raised in polygamous home. So for my mom, I had to grow up a certain way. I had to be presented a certain way. I had to, you know, I have friends that have similar experiences because we always describe it the same way. You know, Nigerian or African parents typically, they project, or they have these expectations of what your life will be like, of what you're going to turn out to be. They start planning, you know, your life as a child, or you're going to go and become a doctor, you're going to go and do this, you're going to go and do that, you're going to go and do this. So I've always been a rebel since I was a kid, though. I've always been a rebel. Like, I've been drawn to art. So as much as they try to draw me to other things, I was like, no, Felicia, no, Felicia, this is not by Felicia, no, Felicia. So I was a bit resistant. So resistance is also a part of my shadow self as well, because that turned into something else, and that turned into like bigger resistance in my adult years. Oops. Where you going? Okay, yeah, that turned into like a big resistance in my adult years. So, but fear for me though, like I said, the way I was raised to be prim and proper, to greet. It was almost like I was being groomed for nobility. That's how African parents groom their kids. Like, okay, you're going to be president one day, so we're training you to be president. You're going to be governor one day. We're training you, we're equipping you with the personalities, with decencies, with, you know, with how you are to interact with people, how you are to speak, your eloquency, the school you go to, and things like that. So, but while those things were happening, you know, I wasn't allowed to be me. I wasn't allowed to necessarily be myself. I was always conscious of how I was going to be in society. I was always, you know, very conscious. I was always on the edge. I was living on the edge, like the edge of a trigger. You know, anything could be a trigger at that point in time, growing up. So, but the fear became like a big deal. You know, when I started to accept the limitations and the belief systems that, you know, the people around me, my parents, my aunties, uncles, family members, cousins, people around me that have accepted for themselves. You know, and when I accepted those limitations, they transformed into fear. You know, they transformed, and that's the thing about belief system. It's connected to the illusion of fear, even though it's not supposed to be. So, and that's one of the ways, or one of my shadow sides actually, or that is one of what used to be my shadow side. You know, being afraid, being scared. So our shadow side presents itself in different ways. You know, and for me, the fear also came with the fact that my mom's a disciplinarian. So you cross the street, you're going to get your ass whooped. You do something wrong, you're going to get your ass whooped. And, you know, you're in trouble, there's a family meeting. So all those things for me, and you know, we don't blame our parents, because that's what they know growing up, and that is how they've been raised as well, with similar patterns to how they raised us. So except, you know, it was probably a lot more different then, but it's the same, you know, shadow self, how we develop into our own shadow self, or develop our shadow selves and our limited self-beliefs and belief systems. It's the same way they experience that as well. So And I didn't know that until when I started dealing with my shadow self. The thing is, our shadow self presents itself in different forms. For me, it's fear, or it was fear, it was anxiety, it was being fear again, being afraid to take a leap of faith, take courage, take action, or when you want to do something and you've been constantly told growing up that you're not supposed to do this, they would not be socially acceptable, or other people are doing this, and the comparison as well. So all those things for me, they grew up, they molded into being my own shadow self. And for some people, it transforms as really unhealthy habits that they explore on their own and they don't share with anyone. I mean, we all have those dark sides that we really do not want to share with anyone. I'll share a bit of mine. Mine used to be wanting to be loved. Yeah, wanting to be loved. So you spread yourself. It's interesting that I've been talking with someone and I have been having this conversation on this trip. Not feeling loved, you're able to give love, but you're not able to receive love. So, but you don't make that connection. So you're quick to suddenly feel like, oh, you're not worthy of love, or people don't love you, or you can't give love, or you're not deserving of it. Like for a while growing up, I'll be like, oh, you know what, I don't want to have a family. Because I'd made that system for myself that, okay, you know what, I'm not worthy of love, and I'm always told I'm selfish when I want to do things that has to do with my my creativity myself, or that are authentic to me, or when I just speak my mind. It was a lot of those things that I would say, oh yeah, like I'm not worthy of this, or I can't deal with this, or I don't think I'm equipped enough to handle this. And what I failed to realize that when I keep accepting my shadow self and letting my shadow self take the ride of, or put me through this ebbs and flow in my subconscious, they become my reality. They start to show on the outside. They start to show in my mannerisms, in how I interact with people, in how I do things. So, so for me, I was, the whole idea of wanting to be loved made me give myself away too much, or give my power away. Or it felt like I was giving my power away, and people would take advantage of me, and they'll dump you until when they need you next. And that didn't sit right with me. That made me feel segregated, that made me feel lonely, alone, and it just made me always want to look outside of myself for this validation, for this external validation. And for me, it was very subtle, because I've seen it play out in other people that is really obvious, but for me it was very subtle. Like, even if it had a chance to become really obvious, it was one of those things that I was so conscious of my shadow self that, it's your shadow self. You don't want anyone to know this is what you are. You don't want anyone to know that, oh, you're afraid of vulnerability, or you don't want anyone to know that you have some sort of weird fetish that has to do with, maybe your daddy or mommy issues. So it was quick to, when it showed on the outside, it was quick for me to, retract it and go back into my shell of, oh, this shy person. And the shy persona was also a part of my shadow self. I'm an introvert. I love my company. I love to be by myself. I do not like the yada yada, and I hate noise. But I am also a lively person. I like to have fun. I like to go out. I like to hang out with my friends, with people that, a vibrational match, or people that, we have similar, or we're able to empower one another. So I always describe myself as an extrovert introvert. But with my shadow self, it gave me a full introspection into all the limitations of my life, all the limitations that had surrounded me, all the limitations that had, and the excuses and the blames and the shame that I had inflicted on myself. And when you start to deal with your shadow self, when you start to strip your shadow self apart, when you start to look at your shadow self in the face, you realize that it has never been about you all along. it and sometimes it's sad because your shadow self is tied to the origin of the shadow self itself, like the system that makes it up. Whatever contributed to it, it wasn't about you. In short, as a matter of fact, you were tampered with, because your shadow self is a projection from whoever or whatever the factors may be to the full component of, say for example, Sheifunmi's shadow self, everything that makes up of that. So when you start to deal with that, you realize that, oh, this was never about me. This is just something that I picked up. This is just something that, it was in my surrounding, and it was bound to just, become a part of my innate being. And you realize that, okay, as much as that is so, then you can let go of this shadow self, you can deal with this shadow self, you can address these issues, you can, okay, I guess I'm just going to be open about it. Growing up, I endured the multiple sexual abuses, and it was, it's surprising because even looking at my journey now, it was just the grace of God, how I was able to persevere and I was able to deal with, the negativity, the issues that surrounded it. Because when I went into therapy, it was like, I went into therapy with most of these issues resolved. And therapy helped my shadow self in a lot of ways. Like, it helped me tremendously. Therapy helped me, face my shadow self in such a way that it was, it was very resourceful to me dealing with my shadow self, or to me dealing with the residue of my shadow self. Granted that I had already, I'd already worked on the sides of my shadow self that would be obvious, the certain triggers or certain shame, anxiety, fear, and darkness that had to do with me being constantly abused by people, because it was like, what the hell was going on in my life? Like, from my teenage years up until my early 20s. And therapy helped me get to the root of the belief system that I had created from all these experiences that had become my shadow self, that was swimming around in my subconscious. It helped me get to the root of my belief system, my core beliefs, my core values. It helped me identify these things